Hello and welcome to another episode covering Kerbal Space Program. In this episode, we're going to be performing a low flyby of the moon, and without the assistance of maneuver nodes or the map. And just for good measure, zero-star pilot, so we have no control of maneuver nodes. Flying by the moon requires just a few basic rules, and you'll see how easy and non-confusing it can be if you do it this way. I do not go for absolute specific details. I'm trying to keep everything within the mindset of the new player who knows little to nothing space related. So, my videos from now on will encourage you to go learn new things, however, about space. So, I will be giving video links to my favourite YouTubers on certain aspects of space travel. With new players in mind, I have also added a common mistake made by new players, and I will get round to that when it happens, although more experienced players may have already seen what is going to go wrong already. So, without further ado, let's get on with the launch. And launch. So, first of all, I like to get everything ready. I like to see all my information as we go along. Check on the zero-star pilot who's never even left the ground and is now about to fly by the moon. Good luck to you, astronauts. So, the new player mistake that I made, first of all, was not turning off a mod that I always use for, that's for science, if you are wondering. It collects your science automatically as you go along. So, the new player mistake that I made was not having a basic understanding of rocketry design. Now, when the solid rocket motors disengage from the main stage, we're going to be left with an engine that's not quite powerful enough to keep us accelerating. So, it's a common thing that most new players do. They'll get to this particular point and they'll say, but it's only just decelerating, can I still do it? Well, yes you can. It's not ideal, but yes you can. I totally recommend researching as to why it's going wrong. You need to understand a lot of things like thrust to weight ratios and things like that. So, when the solid rocket motors disengage any moment now, you will notice that we will lose a few meters a second. It's not the end of the world, however. If this does happen on one of your rocket designs, the best thing to do is to keep going vertical before you go horizontal. Keep going up before you go across. That's the best thing to do. The reason for this is because liquid fuel engines have they like to work at higher altitudes. So at ground level, they're not particularly great, but at these higher altitudes up to vacuum, they really like these spaces. So they work better. They produce more thrust. They have a better ISP. ISP is your specific impulse and is pretty much the same thing as miles to the gallon on a car. If you are not old enough to drive yet, go ask your parents, get them to impart some knowledge onto you. That's what parents are for, right? Okay, but as you saw pretty soon after we started accelerating again, and we can start focusing on the horizontal speed now. So the main things I'm looking for here, remembering that I am manually piloting this without looking at the map, is the apoapsis height. So luckily, because the apoapsis height has height in there, we know that that is the highest point we're going to get to. You can tell this by the top panel there, the top left just there. And we're also looking for the time to apoapsis. So the time to the apoapsis means that is the point where we will reach the highest point of our orbit and we will start going down. We don't want to get too close to that, because if we pass it, then we're going to start going down, and then it's going to require me to start pulling all sorts of maneuvers to keep myself stable. So we're getting roughly to the boundaries of space now. Space begins at 70 kilometers in this game, or 70,000 meters. Okay, so we've hit that point. And we're just going to go on to our next engine. This is the final stage that will perform the rest of the mission and return us safely to Kerbin. Now, I haven't gone for a perfectly circular, 70-kilometer orbit here. Uh, just because reasons, I was focusing more on my instrumentation than I was the actual height of everything. I just wanted to make sure, first of all, that this worked. So, there we go. We're nice and high now, so about 78-ish kilometers. So, the next thing to do is push out the periapsis, the lowest point. And I'm going to do this by a series of simple controlled burns, a bit of time warping here and there just to get myself closer to the time to apoapsis. Now, at this point, the time to apoapsis is kind of critical in my head, at least anyway, and it probably should be in yours, because the closer you are to the time of apoapsis, the easier it will be to push out periapsis when you burn. But you don't want to go too close to the time to apoapsis before you start burning, because you may end up just passing it and end up going back down anyway. But we are almost at a stable orbit now. It's just a very few simple controlled burns just to, and as you notice, very close to the time of apoapsis, just to push ourselves out. And there we go. So I'm not going to get too much more. I think that's where I left it. So yeah, it's a stable orbit. It's not perfectly circular, but it's stable. That's what we need. And that's where we're going. So, as you probably noticed, I turned my spacecraft, I keep saying aircraft, spacecraft. I did mention in the last video that I have a tendency to do this because I was an aviation enthusiast before. So, there's the moon again on the other side, and we're going to flip ourselves over and rotate ourselves so that the communotron antenna on top of my spacecraft is on top. Now, I use this like a crosshair. It is the indication that this is the top of the vessel should you need to perform any docking maneuvers in orbit. It does make things simpler if you know which way is up, down, left, and right. However, on this case, the communotron is akin to the iron sight on a rifle, and we are going to use it to shoot at the moon. So I made the joke in a previous video about the fact that most players, when they first tried to go to the moon, probably just aimed at the moon and just went burn, and then wondered why it didn't work. Well, funnily enough, you were halfway there. You just forgot to add one simple step first, and that is get to orbit. Second step, fire at the moon. Third step, achieve an apoapsis of roughly 11.4 million meters. Now, the reason for this is because all we are going to do is perform a simple flyby of the moon. Moon. Another thing you will have to get used to me with, because let's face it, real life, Kerbal life, they both clash. So yeah, we're going to burn up to the moon's height around Kerbin, which is 11.4 million meters, and this will give us a nice intercept of the moon. It would be very high past the moon, but it's not going to be so high over Kerbin that you're going to be passing the moon's orbit or anything like that. So as you can see, we've just ever so gradually pushed our way out to, I think I want to just a little bit more. So, we're about there now. Just one more little puff from the engine. And we're going to go time warp our way around there. But as I do, I'm just going to explain what happens when we get there. So, at the moment, the nav ball is showing me the position relevant to the body that I'm orbiting, in this case, Kerbin. So that's the way I'm pointing around Kerbin. Now, when I get to the moon, the nav ball is going to change completely, because my position around the moon is not going to be the same as my position around Kerbin. So the nav ball will change. Now, we're going up. We will catch the moon when we start coming down. And back down. So any moment now, the nav ball will change, which will indicate we have intersected the moon's gravity. There we go. Right, I'm going to quickly switch to the map just to prove to you that I am actually intersecting the moon. There we go. The Mun periapsis. There's me, the Mun periapsis. Back to the game screen. So that is the one time I will look at the map, just for your benefits, nothing to do with me. As you could probably tell from the speed I went through that, there was nothing I could actually gain from looking at the orbits by just that quick angle of the map. So, to get back to Kerbin, we're going to get ourselves outside of the gravity well of the moon, and this will be indicated by two things. First of all, the nav ball changed and the camera angle changed. The camera angle changed because we are now on an impact course with Kerbin. This is not good. Not from this height, anyway. So, what are we going to do about it? We're going to correct this issue by, first of all, what I like to do is, first of all, half the altitude that I'm coming in by. So we're going to get down to about 4,500-ish K there. Okay, a little overshoot, but it doesn't really matter. And now I'm going to point radial out. Now, the way that you actually tell the difference between radial out and radial in is radial out has these little lines around them on the outside. Radial in has them on the inside. So radial in, the lines are in, and radial out, the lines are out. And we're not going to full throttle our way in this direction. We're just going to very controlled, and we're just going to push out the periapsis until it is positive, roughly about 17 kilometers. Okay, and as you can tell, I'm doing this all very gently. Don't ever rush anything in space. If you try to rush anything in space, you're gonna mess up. Nothing is ever done quickly in space. Do it controlled, do it carefully, and you'll reap the results. So there we go. I am now just going to re-enter from this altitude, because why not? I'm just going to time warp very jankily back down to Kerbin, because this was my second take of doing this, and on the first take of doing this particular video, I time warped straight into the atmosphere. So that was no good. You know, you missed everything about the video. Now, there is a science behind what's about to happen, and it is the science of aerothermodynamics. Very long word. Not as technical as you'd think, but I do encourage you to go learn about this particular thing, because this is what governs how you get back from space. So, with that in mind, I'm going to video drop a little bit of a lesson video in for you, so you can go and learn a bit more about aerothermodynamics. The guy's name is Scott Manley. He's a very prevalent YouTuber in this particular field. He's a physicist, absolutely knowledgeable in his field, and better yet, he will help you to understand these sciences better than most other lecturers probably would. You know, usually when you don't have an idea about a particular field and you ask somebody about it, sometimes the responses you can get can be quite condescending. You know, where it's almost like they're saying, well, I went to university and learnt about it, why don't you? You know, it's like, I just want to learn a few basic things here, if you don't mind, because it's going to help me with playing a computer game. Well, Scott Manley is not going to condescend to you. He's great. He will teach you a lot. Go and look up his video on aerothermodynamics. It is in the description below. Totally recommend looking that up. It will give you a better understanding, as will many of his videos. He also plays Kerbal space programs, so that is a good thing. So as you can tell, we have bleeded off the majority of our velocity now in the atmosphere. And as you saw, the temperature gauge did come up there. That's not a worry. The only time you want to worry about a temperature gauge is if it turns red. So if it's not red, don't worry about it. You know, that whole thing about if it's not broke, don't fix it. You know, so yeah, that is flying to the moon without a map. I mean, at the end of the day, why do you need a map to go somewhere that you can see? All we do is we follow basic rules to get somewhere, right? So now I've given you the basic rules. 1, get to orbit. 2, aim at the moon and fire. 3, get to 11.4 million meters, roughly. Then basically that is it. That is your flyby. 3 simple rules. Orbit, fire at the moon, 11.4 million meters, boom. And that's it. It's as simple as that. I hope you enjoyed the video. It would be a huge advantage if you could hit the subscribe and like button, because I am new on YouTube and I do plan on doing a lot more, including various challenges and things in the future. Just having a bit of fun in orbit, why not? Docking is one of those sort of things I seem to enjoy most on the game, so maybe most of my videos will cover these particular aspects of space travel. I'm Shalectra, keep the pointy side up, see you next time.